Okay, so today we're going to dive into something pretty huge.
Mm,
This concept of a G2 world order
right.
where the US and China are basically calling the shots,
hmm
influencing everything.
Yeah.
Economics, politics, even culture.
It's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at this YouTube video
Okay.
called Donald Trump, probably the most pro-China president in US history.
Wow.
It's from a channel called Thinkers Forum.
Oh, okay.
And now that title might sound a little provocative.
Yeah.
But the video actually presents a really nuanced discussion on the relationship
Okay.
between the U.S. and China,
Uh-huh.
and specifically how China's growing its influence around the world.
I think it really makes you think critically about this relationship.
Yeah.
It's not just a head-to-head battle between two superpowers.
Right.
It's about how this impacts everyone else
Exactly.
and how it might affect your life directly.
And they throw out some interesting ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Like the speaker says that Trump actually thought that the U.S. and China
Okay.
could work together to solve all the world's problems.
Mm.
And then there's this whole thing about how China's investing
Yeah.
in developing countries to create this whole new middle class that'll eventually buy Chinese products.
Makes sense.
They even talk about this Chinese AI company, DeepSeek, that's kind of giving Silicon Valley a run for its money.
Interesting.
So lots to unpack here.
For sure.
Let's start with the G2.
Okay, so the speaker in the video talks about this multipolar world that's emerging.
Okay?
So basically, instead of power being concentrated in one place,
Like it used to be.
yeah, like during the Cold War,
Uh-huh.
it's now spread out across different power centers.
Got it.
And in this system, the US and China are like the dominant players.
Okay.
They're the G2.
So it's not just theoretical.
No, it's playing out in the real world.
How so?
Like how global trade is flowing, where infrastructure is being built, even how technology is being developed.
So it's not just about these two countries, but how their actions kind of ripple outward and affect everyone else.
Precisely.
Wow.
The speaker even argues that this G2 dynamic could be really good
Oh, yeah.
for countries that have traditionally been kind of overlooked.
So potentially more opportunities for smaller nations
Yeah,
instead of the world just revolving around one big power.
exactly.
Hmm.
But it's never that simple, of course.
Right.
There's potential for both collaboration and conflict.
Between the U.S. and China.
Yes,
So how will they manage this?
that's the big question. And what will it mean for the rest of us?
Yeah.
Like, imagine if China starts controlling most of global trade.
Hmm.
What would that mean for what you can buy?
Right.
And how much it costs?
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's something to think about as this whole G2 thing keeps developing.
It's like we're all watching this huge game unfold,
Yeah,
and we're all part of the audience, whether we realize it or not.
that's a good way to put it.
Now, another thing the video gets into is China's investments.
Oh, right.
Around the world,
Uh-huh.
they're putting a ton of resources into infrastructure and development,
Okay,
especially in places like Africa and Latin America.
that's interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
And this is a really important part of China's long-term strategy.
Oh.
Think about it. Massive transportation networks, energy projects,
Okay.
all these things that are like the foundation for future partnerships.
I see.
And while it's good for those countries,
Yeah.
there's also a really clear strategy at play here.
So they're not just being generous.
Not exactly.
Okay.
China's playing the long game.
How so?
They're building these relationships to get access to resources,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also trying to create a new generation of consumers
I see.
who will buy Chinese products and services.
So it's almost like building brand loyalty, but on a global scale.
Exactly.
Oh.
So it looks like a win-win at first,
Right.
but are there deeper implications?
Potentially.
Like, when does this become less about partnership and more about China exerting its influence,
That's the big question.
right?
Some people argue that these projects come with strings attached,
Okay.
that maybe these countries will end up in debt to China, which raises concerns about whether it's really about helping them develop
Right.
or more about control.
So we need to look at it from all angles.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely not just from China's perspective.
It's a good reminder that things aren't always what they seem.
Very true.
Now let's talk about that Chinese AI company, DeepSeek.
Oh, yeah, the one that built a competitor to ChatGPT
Right.
that got a lot of attention.
And DeepSeek's a really fascinating case study
How so?
because they did all this on a tiny budget.
Really?
Yeah, according to the video, just $6 million.
That's nothing compared to what some American companies spend.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a fraction of their R&D budgets.
Wow.
So the speaker uses this as a wake-up call.
Like, hey, America isn't automatically in the lead anymore.
Exactly.
But I imagine the real cost is way more complicated. Oh, you mean that $6 million figure?
Yeah, there's got to be more to this story.
Yeah,
Like,
primarily.
they were probably using existing technology and infrastructure,
Right.
things that don't show up on a balance sheet, so the cost could be way higher.
That makes sense.
But even if it really was just $6 million,
Yeah.
it still raises some important questions.
Like what?
Like, is this a sign that China is catching up in AI?
Right.
Or is it just healthy competition that makes everyone better?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And to make this even more interesting, the speaker in the video,
Yeah.
he's one of just a handful of Americans
Okay.
who's built a successful company in China.
That's got to be hard.
It is.
Yeah.
Which makes his perspective super valuable.
Absolutely.
He's seen the challenges of bridging the gap between these two cultures.
Mm-hmm.
He even talks about how he gets criticized by both American and Chinese friends.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for his views.
That's tough.
It is.
Yeah,
It just shows how sensitive this relationship is.
for sure. So let's just pause for a second and think about all this.
Okay.
We've got this G2 thing emerging.
Yeah.
China's making all these strategic investments.
Uh-huh.
And then this Chinese company's shaking things up in AI.
It's a lot to process.
It is.
Yeah.
But we're just getting started.
Oh, okay.
We'll be back in a moment to keep going with our deep dive.
Sounds good. It's wild to think that he's like one of only 7 Americans
Oh, right.
to actually build a big company in China.
It just shows how hard it is
It does.
to do business there.
And maybe it's like a blind spot.
Oh, you mean for American businesses?
Yeah, like if we don't really engage with China,
Uh-huh.
are we missing out?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
even worse, underestimating how competitive they are.
It's like we're behind and we don't even know it,
I.
which kind of brings us back to this whole Trump thing
Oh, yeah.
about him being pro-China.
That's a bold statement.
It is, especially with that trade war.
I don't think the speaker's saying Trump was like intentionally helping China. It's more about things not going as planned.
Like unintended consequences.
Exactly. Some people say that what Trump did might have actually made China stronger
In what way?
by making them rely less on the U.S.
So instead of holding China back, he might have pushed them forward.
That's the argument.
Interesting.
Think about the trade war.
Okay.
It caused problems for sure.
Yeah, in the short term.
But it also made China find other countries to trade with
Oh, I
and put a lot of money into their own industries.
So it's like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah, but on a global scale, that's pretty risky.
It is, makes you wonder what the current administration's doing about all this.
It's a balancing act for sure.
Yeah.
They're trying to protect American interests, but they also know China's a big deal.
Right.
Like, there's no question about that anymore. It's more about how we deal with them.
With this mix of rivalry and partnership and competition.
All at the same time.
Yeah, and this isn't just some abstract debate.
No.
It affects all of us.
It does.
Think about all the stuff we get from China.
Oh, yeah, like our phones and solar panels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If they control all that, what happens to us?
Right, and what about all the new technology?
Like AI.
Exactly. The stakes are high.
They are. And it's not just economics and tech.
True.
There's climate change, too.
Yeah. Which needs everyone to work together.
Can the U.S. and China even do that?
Big question.
So much to think about.
We've got the G2 China's investments, this Chinese AI company.
Yeah, it's a lot to wrap your head around.
But hopefully this deep dive is helping.
I think it is.
It's about understanding what's happening and realizing that we're all part of this.
We are. It's easy to feel overwhelmed.
It is.
But the more we know, the better.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Right, so we can adapt and make good decisions.
And even find new opportunities.
That's a good point.
It's all about perspective.
So what can we do with all this information?
Well, first, stay curious.
Okay.
Keep learning about this stuff from different places.
Don't just read the headlines.
Right. Go deeper, explore different views, and even question your own beliefs.
Like the speaker in the video says Trump was pro-China,
Yeah.
whether you agree or not.
Right.
It makes you think about things differently.
Exactly. Question everything.
Don't take anything at face value.
Especially in today's world.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to talk about this stuff.
Even if it's hard or uncomfortable,
Yeah, talk to people with different opinions.
listen to them and be open to changing your mind.
That's how we all learn and grow.
And figure out how to deal with this complex world.
It's not just about the U.S. and China
It's about all of us.
and the future we're building together.
And that brings us back to the speaker's story.
Oh, yeah, about how he gets criticized.
By both sides.
It's like he's caught in the middle.
Yeah, trying to bridge two totally different worlds.
But he has this amazing insight
He does.
into how the U.S. and China work.
He gets the cultural differences, the history, the politics.
And that's something we can all learn from.
Absolutely. There's no one right way to see this.
It's complicated.
It is.
And this video makes us think about all that.
It does.
It challenges us to step outside our comfort zones.
And really engage with this topic.
So now let's dive into one of the most thought-provoking parts of the video.
Okay.
The idea that some of Trump's policies actually helped China.
That's controversial.
It is.
But it's important to think about
Yeah.
what happens when you do something, even if it wasn't what you meant to do.
Especially on a global scale.
Exactly. Like, some people say the trade war made China more self-sufficient
Okay.
and less reliant on the U.S.
And they also had to strengthen ties with other countries.
Right, which made them even more influential.
So it's like she tried to contain China, but it backfired.
That's one way to see it.
Wow, so we need a better approach.
We do something more thoughtful and strategic.
Not just reacting without thinking.
Exactly, because the consequences are huge.
It's like playing chess, but with the whole world.
Yeah, every move matters.
And this isn't just about economics or politics.
No, this is about how the world is going to work.
How we're going to deal with globalization and technology and climate change.
Things that need everyone to work together.
Can the U.S. and China even do that?
That's the million-dollar question.
Are we headed for conflict or cooperation?
The tough one.
It keeps me up at night.
I bet. And I'm sure our listeners are wondering too.
They probably are.
Well, this is a perfect time to move on to the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
where we'll really explore what this means for everyone listening.
Sounds good. So we've talked about the G2, China investing everywhere, AI, and man, the world feels a lot more complicated now.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, but remember, the goal isn't to overwhelm you.
Right.
It's to help you understand.
To make sense of things.
Exactly, like once you see how all this stuff works,
Uh-huh.
you can understand the news better, make smarter decisions.
Yeah.
Even spot opportunities you might have missed.
So let's connect all this back to you, the listener.
Okay.
We've got this idea of a G2 world order.
Right, the U.S. and China calling the shots.
We talked about China investing strategically,
Yeah.
basically creating future markets for themselves.
And then there's DeepSeek, that Chinese company that's shaking things up in the AI world.
And how even when people try to hold China back, it might actually help them in the long run.
Like with the trade war.
Yeah, so what does this all mean for your everyday life?
It means that what happens in Beijing and Washington, it affects us all.
Like how?
The stuff you buy, the news you read, even the jobs that are available. All of that is shaped by this relationship between the U.S. and China.
It's like we're all players in this big game, whether we know it or not.
That's a good way to put it, but the good thing is just being aware of it is a good first step.
Okay.
The more you understand, the better prepared you are.
To adapt.
Exactly, to make good choices and maybe even find some cool opportunities in all this change.
So what can we actually do with this information?
Well, like I said before, stay curious.
Okay.
Keep learning about all this stuff from different sources.
Don't just rely on one news channel or whatever.
Exactly, and don't just skim the headlines.
Dig deeper.
Yeah, explore different opinions, even question your own beliefs.
Like the whole thing about Trump being pro-China
Yeah.
makes you look at things from a different angle,
Exactly.
whether you agree with it or not.
It's about thinking critically,
Question everything,
especially these days.
and don't be afraid to talk about it.
Even if it gets a little heated sometimes.
Yeah, talk to people who see things differently.
Listen to their perspective. Be open to changing your mind.
That's how we all learn and grow.
And figure out how to navigate this crazy world.
It's not just about the U.S. and China.
It's about all of us and the future we're creating together.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we have one last challenge for you.
Okay.
Don't let this be the end of the conversation.
Keep thinking about it.
Keep exploring. Keep questioning. Keep connecting the dots.
Because the future is happening right now, and the more you understand these big forces at play,
The better equipped you'll be to shape that future.
and that's what it's all about.